The Second Amendment is not just about home defense. Lots of people use the Second Amendment to justify owning all kinds of interesting and weird firearms or arming certain groups of people. But if we're going to use the Second Amendment for any sort of argument and discussion, then we need to be honest about what it's for. It's not about an individual person protecting themselves against a single adversary in public or even in their own house. The Second Amendment is for the citizenry to hold rogue governments in check. So if we're going to have a conversation about the Second Amendment, we need to talk about the militaristic characteristics that the average citizen should possess in order to fulfill what the Second Amendment is about. One of these capabilities that the average citizen should consider pursuing is precision shooting, or utilizing a sniper rifle. Now, that doesn't just mean being able to shoot really far or shoot really precise, it's everything else that goes along with that. Observation, intel gathering. But one of the arguments for why the average citizen should consider this is when you look at military operations that are being conducted around the world for the last 20 years, and you look at what the average citizen possesses, most civilians and citizens do not have groups or infrastructure capable of performing direct action raids like our military does. You don't have dozens and dozens of people and all sorts of drones and intelligence and things that are going on that our government relies on in order to perform actions overseas. Whereas a few people with rifles such as this, with certain equipment, can actually do a lot of good, and it's also much more defensive in nature, taking up positions and gathering intelligence and potentially kind of scoping out what's going on can actually be done by a few people without a lot of infrastructure. It's also interesting to note that citizens can possess the same equipment that is being used at the highest levels within our own government when it comes to precision shooting, with a couple exceptions. Thermal inods that are around $80,000, $90,000. Yeah, those are pretty restricted, can't really get those. But when it comes to a delivery system for an ammunition type, anyone can go out there and buy a Barrett MRAD or a Surgeon CSR if you can find one. There's only 12 of these out there, but a rifle such as this at delivering around ammunition, we can still get that. Weapon-mounted laser rangefinders, we can get the exact same ones that the military is using, granted without the high power function, which in this case I actually don't need, but we can possess the same equipment that the military is using for this type of activity. Unlike, say, belt-fed machine guns, select fire weapons of other types, but when it comes to precision shooting, we can have the same that the government has, and I would actually argue better in some cases. Now, you're hearing all of that and going, well, Lucas, the average citizen can't own all this, it's really expensive. And that is correct. You're never going to be able to buy a full precision rifle setup for sub $1,000, especially with the way inflation is going. But I would also make the point that not every citizen back in 1775 had a warship either. Not everyone possessed the same type of equipment. Some people who maybe had their own businesses had more resources than the average person, but those resources were still able to come together for a greater purpose and resist the most powerful nation in the world at the time. It is for all of these reasons that I have just listed that T.REX Arms will be pursuing equipment to support precision shooting activities and offering them on our website. Now, before we get into the various equipment and some of the gear that you all have seen in some of our content recently, I want to give a few disclaimers. I've only been doing long-range precision shooting and purchasing this equipment and collecting it for the last 2 years. And if I had my way, I would not be producing this video right now. In fact, I've been thinking about this for the last couple days. If I'm really ready to produce a video like this, talking about this equipment and giving you guys some comparisons between some of it. And the reality is, I would rather wait a couple years to produce this video. I would rather have more experience and spend more time training with this and traveling the country and talking to people before offering material to all of you. But the way things are going with the country, I don't think we can wait that long. I think this is information that needs to be out there as soon as possible, and I will continue to hone my craft in this skill set, and I will continue purchasing, researching equipment, and keeping you guys up to date. But thinking about it a lot, I've realized, hey, this is stuff that needs to be out there right now, and we will refine it as we go. With that said, I have had the unique opportunity of training with people at the tippity top of the food chain. I've been out to Hat Creek a couple times training with Brian Morgan. Some of you guys will know who that is. And I've been able to keep up with him a little bit, ask him lots of questions about all of this. I've been able to go see some military training as well, but I'm not going to talk too much about that. And I've also have the opportunity of having a budget to spend on this equipment that most people will not have, to be able to purchase different laser rangefinders, rifles, ammunition, in the process of gaining perspective on what is out there that citizens can be purchasing, should be purchasing, or maybe should be staying away from. So it's my goal with this video to share what I have experienced so far. I'm not going to be telling you all what to do. I am saying this is what I am doing right now. This is what I have learned. And you guys can then comment on your experiences. You can point out where I'm wrong. You can point out areas where maybe I can be stronger or areas I should look into. I am speaking from what I am doing right now and what I have done for the last 2 years. And this is not me telling you all what to do. There's a clarifying term that I want to give, and you long-range nerds out there, feel free to correct me. There was a lot of confusion early on when I was getting into this, mixing the term long-range shooting and precision shooting. And I was always calling it long-range because I felt like, well, this is a gun that will shoot further than my ARs, and so it's a long-range sniper rifle. Well, the correct term is actually precision shooting, because a lot of activity that is actually occurring when it comes to long-range shooting or precision shooting is not all happening at 1,000 meters. It's not all happening at a mile. A lot of it is actually happening between 400 and 800 meters. And the reason it's called precision shooting is typically people are shooting very small targets inside of that distance, where it would be much harder for a standard AR, especially like say a Colt or something with like an ACOG, to smash a head plate 10 times out of 10 at 400 meters that this gun can do simply because of how this is set up. So the correct terminology for this is not long-range shooting, because long-range can also mean a lot of different things depending on the weapon. It is precision shooting. It is taking these rifles and able to thread bullets and do very small little holes and do things with them that the standard carbine or subgun cannot do. So I'm trying not to say long-range shooting, because that can mean a lot of things, and it's imprecise. And this is precision shooting. So the first piece of equipment that I had to figure out early on was some sort of delivery system, some sort of rifle that can take a cartridge, preferably in .308 or 6.5, out to a little bit further distance than all the ARs that I've been shooting for the last, at the time, 8 years, now 10 years. And I settled on 6.5 Creedmoor for the majority of my guns. And one of the big questions that I had was gas gun or bolt gun. I know a lot of you guys are going to think that as well. Why should I buy a bolt gun if I can go get a gas gun chambered in the same caliber? I can shoot it faster, I can shoot it up close, I could do CQB with it, you know, unlike say a bolt gun. Why would I even consider a bolt gun in the first place? And that is a question that I've asked basically every single person I run into who I respect. Gas gun or bolt gun, like what's your unit using, why are you doing this? And sort of the rule of thumb kind of that I get is it is easier to shoot a bolt gun because there's less receiver flex and there's less going on. But precision gas guns, not like 16-inch 308 DMRs, but precision gas guns, you know, 22-inch barrel 6.5s, like the Seekins SP10M back there, are getting as good as a bolt gun. Like you can shoot them very precisely. Now there's a lot of reliability issues that I have experienced in these larger caliber DMR platform guns. They do not shoot as reliably as like your standard AR, but they are a lot better than they were, say, 20 years ago. So if you're someone looking into a bolt gun, if I were going back and doing it all over again, like this is in 6.5 and I enjoy shooting it a lot, if I didn't have a lot of money, I would focus on a Magnum caliber bolt gun if I want to shoot a big bullet, so such as my 2010 or something similar, like a Barrett MRAD. And if I'm shooting smaller cartridges like 6.5 or 7.62, so 308, that's going to be in a gas gun format. Some sort of precision gas gun, a Daniel, a Seekins, something nice, not your like budget 16-inch 308 battle rifle type gun, something that is a little bit more precise, and I leave the bolt guns to Magnum calibers. But as it stands right now, I have a bunch of bolt guns that are chambered in 308 and 6.5. I shoot those quite a lot. And I have even noticed shooting this Surgeon, for example, for my 3/4 100-meter drills, I can drill 3/4 pasters much more consistently shooting a gun like this than a gas gun. Even though they're both shooting sub-MOA, there's just more stuff going on with the gun. I don't even exactly understand all of it, but I could shoot this gun better than a gas gun, even in the prone with a bag on a 3/4 pacer at 100. It's just more consistent with a bolt gun. So I'm still shooting these, but getting a Magnum should be on the top of the list if you're looking into a bolt gun. As far as gas guns go, if you have a 5.56 gun, something you should consider doing, most 5.56 gas guns are not sub-MOA. doesn't matter what the manufacturer says, they're not sub-MOA. They will say it, they're pulling 3-shot groups, they're pulling the best 3-shot group they can. Most ARs on the market are going to be shooting over 1-inch groups. Now, it's not necessarily the end of the world, but you should consider good ammunition. But one thing you should look into is good barrels. I highly recommend Criterion. We have consistently gotten 1 MOA or sub-MOA performance with those, shooting 10-shot groups. I just built this gun. This is going to be fun. This is a BCM. I pulled the barrel out though, and this is a proof barrel. I've never shot a proof barrel. Lots of high-level competitors shoot these. This barrel was $950. Yes, it's 3 times the price of a Criterion barrel. We're going to find out if it's 3 times as good. We'll see. It's a carbon fiber wrapped stainless barrel with a bunch of other stuff going on with it. It should be sub-MOA. And this is going to be a gun that is dedicated. I'm going to use for dedicated precision shooting as an AR. So head plates at 400, head plates at 500. I'm not going to be burning this gun up close. That's how I'm treating this rifle. I have a mill-based reticle. We'll get to that later. But if you have a regular AR and you want to turn it into an SPR and put a big scope on it and do a bunch of stuff, just understand that that rifle is probably not super accurate to begin with. You may not get a lot out of it. It might be better to swap the barrel, or it might be better to just not even touch that gun, leave a red dot on it, leave an ACOG on it, and instead build something that's a little bit more purpose-driven towards precision shooting with a better barrel. I've had really good experiences with the Seekins. My SB10M, I have taken to a course and run that. Runs awesome. I've shot those out to a mile. That's a gas gun, and it's a precision gas gun at that. Bolt guns, this is a Seekin 6 ARC that I have right here where I'm about to start playing with. 6 ARC is definitely gaining in popularity. I've seen 6 ARC shot out to 1200, that'll be much more reliable than 5.56. It's a small frame gun, so it's a little bit lighter. Definitely something to consider. But even if you just take something like this, you know, a 16-inch AR, throw a suppressor on it, put a magnified optic on it, you could still do a lot with a rifle like this without going out and buying something crazy like a Seekins, like a DD5 V4, if you just have a decent AR in 5.56 and you know what the gun is doing. So once you have a rifle, the next thing is a scope. What kind of optic do you put on the gun? Now, this is where I did a lot of research and I learned some interesting things. So, as you will see, I have a lot of Night Force scopes on these guns. In fact, I've got Night Force on everything, with the exception of my 2010, which has a clone correct loophole thing that does some weird stuff. Night Force is a very interesting company because they pride durability over a lot of things. They hit scopes on things in demonstration and as I believe part of their QC process as well to see if the reticle moves and does a bunch of weird stuff. Everybody at the top, or like most guys at the top, are running Night Force. If it works for them, it definitely works for us. People in SOCOM, USASOC, foreign entities, you'll see them at USASOC Sniper Comp. It's like 90% of the people are all running Night Force. 80%, a lot of people. The interesting thing is a lot of people complain about the price of Night Force. The Attacker series, yes, is expensive. The 1 to 8's like $2,400 ish, $2,800. This Attacker 7 to 35, I think is just shy of $3K, or it's like $3,100, something like that. So yes, it is expensive. But here was the fascinating thing. I went and did research because I was looking for a budget mil-radian, like reticled scope with a tree that's first focal plane. So as you zoom the scope in, the reticle gets larger. And the cheapest scope I could find was still about $1,000. It was a Primary Arms something or other, and we've got one. When a lot of people, when they're talking about how cheap scopes are compared to these, they're not actually comparing the same thing. They're not comparing, first off, if it's first or second focal plane. They're not comparing whether it's a mill-based reticle with like a good tree, action going on. There's a lot of stuff going on with the scope, like does it even track consistently? If I dial 6, am I actually dialing 6 according to my ballistic computer and my calculation for what I need to do? Or in the process of dialing 6, was it actually 5.2? Or was it 6.8? There's a lot going on with these budget scopes that a lot of people, especially newer shooters, aren't going to discern or know that's what's going on with them, or even be able to compare when they're looking online why a certain scope is this much money and why this one over here is so cheap. The cheap scopes out there are generally second focal plane. They're easier to manufacture, and that means the reticle doesn't change as you zoom in and zoom out, which is a problem when you start trying to figure out what your holds are, whether you're shooting on 3x, 8x, or 12x versus 1. And usually the reticles are not anything to write home about. They're nothing special. It's like a mil dot, like something or rather. So if you are going to go and price check different manufacturers' scopes, make sure you're actually comparing the same like specifications. First or second focal plane, tube diameter potentially, so like how much light is getting into the scope and like some other stuff, and what kind of reticle is it? Is it a mill-based reticle? Is it a tree? Is it not a tree? Is it a trimmer 3 or not? You don't necessarily have to have that, but what I found in my research is the cheapest scopes that had some of those same specifications were still about $1,000. And some of these Night Forces you can pick up for $1,800. They're not that much more to get them. And in fact, there's one on the M110 over there that's just $1,100. So you can get big name brand scopes for not an infinite amount of money if you do your research and know what you're looking for. But as you will see, I've got Night Force on everything. I really like Night Force. There's some other companies that make some good scopes. This is just what I like. It's what we're offering at T.REX Arms. I very much enjoy shooting these. I've used these out to a mile. I've used these in weird conditions. I haven't had any fail on me. And I've talked to people at Night Force and kind of know what's going on over there. So I trust the brand and I trust the product. As far as reticles that I am using, I am shooting mill-based only. You guys can go and do research on MOA versus mill. The big reason I'm using mill is it is most consistent across the board with professional shooters and the military. It also makes it easier when you're like doing some math in your head and some of these devices, when you start to rely on ballistic calculations, instead of dialing like 40 MOA, you're dialing 8 MRAD or 8 mils instead. It's just a little bit easier on the brain doing mills, and it's what most people are using. But you can go do research yourself on which you would prefer. If you're someone that's used MOA for forever, that's probably what you're gonna do. I'm using mill and only mill for all of these scopes. And they're all first focal plane, so I zoom in to 20x, my reticle gets big, I can only see a little bit of the tree, and then when I zoom out, I'm gonna have a little bit less, but I can still shoot off of that and it's just fine. My scope mounts, you'll see a lot of them have dive boards that shoot off at the front. It's so you can mount weapon-mounted rangefinders. If you don't have one of those, they are very useful. Just as a little tip, when you are shooting on a barricade, you can throw your hand on top of these without disturbing the scope itself. Putting downward pressure on the actual scope itself can affect your sight picture. It could potentially affect accuracy at further distances, but having something you can actually grab onto that's separate from the scope, throw your hand on top of, is super useful. Also probably protects the scope if I were to drop this. So this setup right here is not just for laser rangefinders. You could also pick up one of these just for a little bit of added shootability at the cost of extra money and obviously extra weight. One misconception I had with scopes when I was getting into this is, what magnification do I buy for what? You guys have probably heard the whole for every 100 meters have 1x, and that's kind of sort of true. For me, I'm trying to do 2x off of what I want to shoot, possibly even more. So if I'm trying to shoot out to say 1,000 meters, I want at least 20x. And the reason for that is not so I can go to 20x, because I'm going to be shy of whatever my max magnification is at pretty much all times. So for example, with this 7-35, I rarely go to 35. If I go to 35, all I can see of my actual reticle is like 2 mils. I see a very small picture, and if I'm on 35 shooting at a target at say 1,000 meters, it's going to be very hard to see splash around the target if I can't see around the target very much. So when I've gone to Idaho a few times, I've been not on 35 shooting to 1,200 meters. I'm usually between 20 and 25. The only time I'm actually going full zoom to is if I'm looking for a target or trying to identify something, but otherwise I'm backing off so that I can see about 8 mils into my scope. I have good field of view of what's going on, and I'm actually around the 20 to 25 area with this particular scope. So just because, I have a scope that goes to 35 does not mean it's most advantageous to shoot on 35. It's like in video games. You almost never want to shoot at full magnification because it kind of sucks. Shooting the 2-20s, this is by far my favorite scope, most versatile scope I have used. This is the NX8 2-20 or NXS. I get the two confused. This is a 2-20, meaning I can back it all the way down to 2.5x. And shoot it up close super fast. It's also a shorter, stubbier scope, but I can go to 20x if I have to. I typically shoot this scope at 14 to 12 to 16-ish in that area, and I usually don't play with it. Once it's set, it's set. I've got my parallax I might deal with, and then dialing if I need to, but I am staying on that magnification pretty much the entire time, and that works best for me. I can see 12 mils if I'm on 16. If I'm on 12x, I can see 14, and I'm good to go. And I rarely go to 20. Even if I'm shooting at 100 meters on little pacers, I'm not on 20 either. I'm backed off from there. After I selected optics for my guns, I had to pick ammo. Now, unfortunately, ammunition, just like with a lot of gun things related to firearms industry stuff, all the nerds come out to talk about ammo. And there's people out there who do load development, who spend hours at the range changing 0.01 grains of a powder and distance of bullet seating and brass, like crazy stuff just to improve like a thing by like 5% for a cartridge they're trying to develop for one gun. Not even like a batch of ammo for all their guns, like for one specific rifle. If you like to do that, that's cool. Most of us don't want to do that. Most of us aren't nerds. We're autistic in other ways. We're not autistic when it comes to load development and having a Dillon reloading press and doing all of that. Most of us are probably going to do basically what the military does. We're going to find a cartridge that we like, that we can also afford, and we're going to buy that, and we're going to hope that it works on most guns. Or maybe we test some ammo and then buy a certain caliber, like a certain manufacturer for this gun, a certain one for this one. The main ammunition that I've tested a lot out there, at least of the big names. The one that I consistently come back to is Federal Premium Gold Medal Match. Shooting Sierra Match King bullets, which are hard to beat. There are some better bullets on the market. There's a lot of people shooting the Eagle something or others. There's a lot of people shooting those bullets and loading them up and doing stuff. But as far as like a factory load you can go and buy and just start running into guns and getting consistent velocities and good accuracy, these are very hard to beat. And so I'm running these on most guns. Like when I bought my 2010, I didn't want to go buy 5 different 300 Win Mag types to shoot, because 1, I don't really want to do that, and 2, that's a lot of time, and 3, that's a lot of money. I just went, you know what, I trust Federal, I'm just going to go buy a couple hundred rounds of this at $2.50 a round. So when I zeroed that gun, it was 25 bucks, and that kind of sucks. But I just went out, bought that, and the ammunition was super accurate, and I haven't chronoed yet, so we'll see what the velocity is out of that gun. But the important thing to understand, and this is the one that was new to me and super wild, is no two ammos will ever be the same on different guns. So I've had that gun really like Hornady ammo. It did not like the Federal as much. And then I've had other Seekins guns like the Federal ammo and not like the Hornady. So you're probably thinking, well, how on earth are you going to standardize ammunition if you have like 4 different rifles and they all like different ammo? Well, exactly that. You probably can't. You might, if you want optimal performance, you're going to have to test a lot of ammo. If you want to just get a good ammunition like the Hornady, either Federal, or call it a day and know that maybe you're losing out on a little bit of performance by not optimizing, that's fine too. The most important thing though is pick an ammunition, stick to it consistently. If you do change ammunitions, what I have found is my zero is completely off. My muzzle velocity is completely off. I have to re-chrono and re-zero off of that ammunition. So I stick to the same ammunition on that rifle, and even changing lots can change too. So if I shoot this lot from this year and then this lot from another year, it can be different. So the name of the game when you're getting into precision shooting, and you don't have to do this as much as ARs, I don't have to do this as much as ARs, I should say, is confirming zero all the time. Because you never know what's going to be different. For example, when I took this gun to Hat Creek, we're at an elevation of I think 6,000 feet. My zero was off. I corrected it. You know, the pressure and everything's going on. It's a little different. When I came back down to here, we're at an elevation of I think 800. I was 2 mils high at 100 meters in the prone just shooting. Like everything's off. So you're constantly confirming zero with guns like this. I'm confirming zero every range day. I take this gun out and just ensuring that everything is staying consistent and correct, even though I'm shooting the same ammunition. So there's a level of attention to detail with guns like this, even for this like optimized AR I just built, that if you want to squeeze out the most precision possible, you have to take into consideration. And that was new for me, being a carbine shooter, because I have shot carbines with red dots inside of 50 meters for years, like a couple 100,000 rounds, just burning it down. And I treat those guns very differently than these guns. Like those, like technically, this is going to sound blasphemous. You could technically take an AR, like a Colt, throw a red dot on it, do a full training day with the gun unzeroed, inside of 25 meters. You could still hit bodies, you could hit headshots probably. You don't have to do a thing to the gun, you could still get valuable reps. A gun like this, you're not going to do that if you want to start training at 200, 300, or even 100 meters on little pasters. That is not going to happen. There's more detail involved in knowing what the gun is doing and understanding the gun in order to be consistent, pull the trigger, and know that's exactly where the bullet's going to go. So that was new for me getting into that. So I'm shooting federal ammo for the most part, but I have a lot of ammo that I am testing through different guns. The 5.56 ammunition of choice that we are using for most guns is Black Hill 77 grain Mark 262. It is very consistent ammo for 5.56 guns. And the other point I am going to make, the way I treat these firearms is, again, unlike ARs, I don't have training precision ammo and then my good precision ammo. I am shooting only my precision ammo in training. I'm not doing the whole like 55 grain, you know, like crap ammo for up close burner targets and then precision ammo for long range. I'm only shooting this gun or similar guns with that exact, you know, match ammunition that's for that gun. Because if I'm at 100 meters shooting 3/4 pacer drills, when I pull the trigger, I need to know exactly where the round is going based on the ammunition I'm shooting, because I'm taking that same performance and trying to replicate it at 500, 600 meters on head plates. And if I am using training ammo that's 2 MOA, and then I'm trying to shoot 600 meters with ammo that is sub MOA, I'm not going to really know what's going on with the rifle. So if you are getting into a precision rifle of some kind, I recommend not doing the whole training ammo thing, like pick an ammo and only shoot that ammo through that gun so you really know what that gun is doing. Mixing ammos doesn't really work with these types of rifles as well as it does with ARs, and you're just burning hundreds of rounds into paper against a berm. Probably the most frustrating thing for me to learn in this whole process is the importance of chrono. What I'm talking about is when you purchase ammunition, you finally select what you like. What is convenient is on most of these boxes, they'll have a bunch of information on the muzzle velocity of this round. You know, so in this case, the 6.5 140 grain Sierra Match King is coming out of the barrel at 2675. And they say that was out of a barrel length of, they don't say. So I can assume this is a 2675 muzzle velocity out of, let's say, this bolt gun with a 22-inch barrel, or 24, I can't remember what it is. And I could input this into a ballistic calculator to start building a dope card, technically. However, it's probably not correct. Sometimes on ammunition, they say, like on the Black Hill 77 grain, I think it's like 2,600 feet per second out of a 20-inch barrel. Well, most of you guys watching this are probably running 13.9s or something really trendy, and your muzzle velocity with that ammo is actually probably like 2450 or something like that. I'm just making that up. And what you're going to find, though, is if you input the wrong muzzle velocity into a ballistic computer to generate a dope card for your stock of the rifle or whatever, it's going to be completely off. This is where chronoing your specific rifle with that specific ammunition is super important. And unfortunately, before this was developed, I started out using the Magneto. You attach it to the barrel and you have to make sure it's just right and so the bullet doesn't impact. It's super annoying. It takes forever to set up. I hated doing that process, but it's necessary to really know what the gun is doing. But then Garmin came out with this little guy, the Xero. That's how you pronounce it. And you literally just take this little radar device, you set it next to the muzzle, you fire off 10 rounds, which is a good sample set to figure out what your gun is doing, and then it gives you the average muzzle velocity that you can then input into a ballistic calculator to actually know what your gun is doing before you get to the truing and you actually true the gun at distance. So this little device, super handy, way more efficient than what has existed on the market. The downside to this is it's quite expensive. These are like $550 or something like that. So the way I view this item right here is if you have a group of friends, if you have friends in 2024, possibly coordinating with them and going, hey, is someone going to buy one of these? If not, do we want to pool to buy one and be a bunch of communists? Or just coordinate, because this is more of a squad item, is how I see this, versus an item that every individual should own. Maybe that sounds weird, but at the price point of what this is and how often you would be using it, which is not necessarily all the time, it is a lot of money for something you only need like every once in a while. So it is an expensive piece of equipment. Maybe it's something you coordinate with your pals, and then you have in your like armory or whatever. And that's how we use it here. But I'm really thankful for this because it does expedite the process really well, and it seems to also work very well. And Garmin they know what they're doing. If you don't have a chrono, you can do this thing called truing. I'm going to explain. I mean, you should do both, but I'll explain it very briefly. Basically, truing the gun is a process where you try to shoot the gun as far as possible to the edge of subsonic or really subsonic or transonic Typically, I've trued this rifle at 900 meters, and so basically what you're doing, and this is where a ballistic computer comes in handy, you punch in the muzzle velocity you believe your gun is, so in this case, 2675 for this gun, and I set all the specifics. 900 meter target, it tells me my hold is, I want to say it's 9.5-ish, something like that. I then pull the trigger, perfect position, in the prone, bagged, all set, properly caffeinated, all that good stuff. I fire and I see where my impact is. And in the process of shooting out to 900 meters, or whatever distance I have, I realize, hey, to land right where my reticle is upon dialing, you know, it's 10.2 instead of like 9.5. You can then go into a ballistic computer, you can say, hey, at 800 meters or 900 meters, it's 10.2, not 9.5 like it thinks. It will then generate the muzzle velocity that your gun is actually shooting like the round out at that speed. And you're actually truing the gun to that distance, and it's a more accurate representation of the muzzle velocity of your round than just chronoing at the muzzle. Now, the downside with truing in certain environments is my understanding, I could be wrong, this is my understanding, is when I have trued this rifle at Hat Creek, so elevation of 6,000 feet, there's also like 40 degrees outside, and I'm shooting a target at 900 meters at their truing bar. I was getting different muzzle velocity at that distance at 900 than, say, shooting a target here in Tennessee at 900. So the muzzle velocity of the round coming out doesn't change. It's still 2550 out of this gun, I think, something like that. Or it's a little faster. But it will be different at distance. And so those are some things that you have to mess with. But there's more information about that online. Chronoing at the muzzle generally gets you most of the way there. Truing at distance is what you want to do to make any sort of refinements. And you do have to check that at different environments if you're changing things dramatically. So I just mentioned ballistic computers. So once I have a muzzle velocity on the rifle, I then need to know how to decide what that muzzle velocity means at what distance for like what mils and all that good stuff. That's where you use a ballistic computer of some sort. There are lots of free apps that you can download. A really popular one, Straylock, is now gone because the dude who invented that was literally sanctioned by, I believe, our own government because he's Russian. So that doesn't exist anymore, but there are some Western American apps that allow you to punch in all the data for your rifle and then actually generate a dope card that's quite accurate or very accurate that you could then just print off or like write down to put on your stock or put into your like sleeve, your quarterback sleeve or something. What a lot of guys use, and we'll get to this in a minute, is a Kestrel, a 5700. This has a ballistic computer built into it. We'll get into that in a second. But if you're maybe you don't want to spend the money on a Kestrel, but you still want to start playing around with a ballistic computer, the one that I really like is the Hornady app. All right, so I'm screen recording so you guys can see my device. Don't get any ideas. I've got the Kestrel app, top left. That is the app that I use for building profiles for this sucker, but we'll get to that. Straylock doesn't exist anymore, but I had it before it got banned. Geoballistics, that is the Vortex app. So basically what happens is a lot of companies go and make their own app because they want their own thing to go with their product versus paying the licensing fee to Applied Ballistics, which is a laboratory where there's a bunch of nerds that do a bunch of nerd stuff. And they do a lot of hard work developing data on different bullets and what they do when you start shooting them far away. And they charge money for that, as they should. And some companies don't want to pay the licensing for all that information data or the ballistic computing, and so they go and like build their own. But we got Geoballistics, that's the Vortex one for the Impact 4000. SIG-BDX, the issue that I've had with SIG-BDX is you can't really play around in the app. So there are apps that are built around components or devices, and then there's apps where you can just mess around inside of them and like try things out and do things and build guns and build dope cards and stuff. And there's kind of like, they're not always together. They're usually kind of separate. SIG-BDX is like that. You've got to Bluetooth a device to the app in order to start doing stuff. So it's kind of useless unless you've bought a SIG product. Garmin Shot View, I don't know what that is. And then I have the Hornady app. So we're going to open that one up. So you'll see there's a bunch of stuff in here. There's an ammo library. Oh, that's a cool JP rifle. It's actually kind of weird, but group analysis. There's a bunch of fun stuff that you also have to pay for. We're just going to hit the 4DOF calculator. Okay, so this is highly educational, I will say. If you have not gotten into all this yet, I wish I had done this when I started, was just messing around in apps and just learning stuff. It would have helped before I went and got some training officially. But inside this app, I can select a bullet type. So up here at the top, I could select my type of bullet. So I'm going to go select my bullet type. let's say I'm shooting, I want to show you guys how I use this app. So 308, 175 grain. So we're going to go find 308, 30 cal. This is a Sierra Match King bullet, so we're going to scroll to the bottom. Ah, looks like I already had it selected. 175 grain, SMK, good to go. Now at this point, if I select the distance here on the left, I think this is in yards, that's lame. We'll say 400 yards. It will tell me that my elevation in MRADs is 1.7 to hit that target. Now, however, I already know that the data for my profile is actually not correct because the muzzle velocity is 2,900, which is really fast for this ammo. So I'm just going to go off of box data to correct this. 2,600. I'm going to bring that down. Odds are, shooting this out of like a short barrel gun, it would drop down to 2,500 or 2,520, something like that. Zero range. This one doesn't matter a lot, but you want it to be as precise as possible. It's right now set to yards, 100 yards. Why 0 meters? So that's going to be 10. Oh, geez. It's going to be, go to 100. 109. Sight height. This is the distance of center of reticle to center of bore. Most guns, it's like 2 1/4, at least for like big caliber gas guns. So this right here is already off. 2.5 is as high as I can go. I'll just say 2.5. Barrel twist. 308 guns, a lot of them are 1 in 10. So I'm going to make it 1 in 10. That's more correct. Everything else is probably this good to go. Yep, save. All right, so now you'll see my MRADs has changed because my velocity dropped. I added some extra stuff in there, and now my hold would be 2.1 on a 400 yard target, which is like 370 meters, something like that. But this is what's really fun. So if you have an app like this, and I did this recently for a CS range day, is I went into Hornady's app online, did it at my computer, and I punched in a gun profile. I was doing the PSA M110 because I already know like the muzzle velocity and like everything going on with the gun. And I gave myself a scenario, a target at a man-sized target at 700 meters. The default weather was, I set the default weather, 59 degrees, 78 humidity, 0 altitude. I actually probably should have set altitude to like 800. And then I just went in here and played around. What happens if I change? What distance I zero the gun? How much does my hold change? What happens if I add a bunch of temperature? I take it from 59 degrees to 90 degrees. What if I drop humidity? What if I, am shooting at an upward angle of 10 degrees versus a downward angle? And I just saw how much of a change my hold would be. And the fun part about all of this that makes precision shooting intimidating to a lot of people, including myself, is this is all stuff you have to know is happening in the background and you have to manage as best as you can. All of these little variables, and a lot of them are weather dependent or environmental dependent here at the bottom, wind being the biggest one. And that's stuff that you can't necessarily rely on computers and stuff to do. You have to do yourself to some extent. But there's stuff like, you laze improperly, you put in the wrong ammunition type, so you just have completely the wrong dope, and now you're completely off. So this is a fun homework project if you just want to understand this stuff better, is give yourself a scenario, a certain target at a certain distance, build a gun of a certain type, and then just punch in stuff and see what changes things the most or doesn't really change things. That was a fun project. But you do the same thing with this app. I can now jack the distance to 500 yards. I could go in and change, let's say the target. So right now, elevation 0. I'm going to come up to, say, where we live. So this is like 800. It's right now about 70 degrees out. The humidity is usually about 70 here. I'm going to say save, and I'm going to go back to 400 to see what the comparison was, and it's 207. So it didn't really change. Didn't really change anything when I added that stuff. But once I have all my data inputted somewhat correctly, muzzle velocity, sight height, zero distance, some temperatures, environmental stuff that's like consistent to this area, in my elevation and my pressure, I can then hit this button down here, and that is going to allow me to build a dope card, or a range card. So I'm going to set max distance shooting 308. We'll say 1,000 actually, because why not? We'll say 50 meter intervals, and then this gives me all the data that I would need that I want to actually build a dope card starting at, say, 200 meters, I would then just write this out or print it out. So this is a free way. If you have a way of chronoing your gun or truing your gun, this is a free way of coming up with a decent dope card for your rifle without spending money on Ballistic Computers. I just did all this for free, every single thing on here. I didn't have to spend any additional money besides having an iPhone and having an app. And I could see that at 1,000 meters, I would be 11.1 or 11.2. Here in Tennessee, taking a shot at 1,000 meters with this ammo, with this gun, at this muzzle velocity. So pretty nifty. The apps are pretty nifty. Now, I don't use the Hornady app a whole lot. It's kind of there for fun, or if I want to demonstrate something or show someone something, or I'm just playing around with an ammo type. I use the Kestrel app, which is this one right here, which if you do buy a Kestrel, which I do highly recommend because it does some things that a phone app will not, a lot of things actually. This is the app you're going to want to use to send information to the Kestrel. This is where you're actually going to have your entire gun library. So you'll see mine right here. I've got my DD5 V4 shooting 6.5 Federal at the top. My Knights 11.5 shooting green tip, my MCX9 and shooting 300 Blackout Supers, a Seekins, an M110, my 417 Assaulter, a bunch of just weird stuff. A lot of it I haven't cleaned out, which I should. The Arsenal 104 shooting 5.45 by 39. What a piece of crap. Just a lot of interesting guns in here. An SP10 and 260. So yeah, a lot of interesting guns in here. And the cool thing is I can go in here, and the most important thing with this in particular is this has like every bullet that exists, basically. So one of the most difficult parts to building a gun profile is, and some boxes of ammunition have it, but they don't all, is the length of the bullet, the diameter, the ballistic, the BC of the round, the ballistic coefficient, like how fast and how it flies through the air like an unladen swallow.
What is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow?
All that information is, or as much of it as possible, is in this library. So you'll see right here, I've got like every size known to man. So I can go into all the 6.5s, and I've got like everything in here. And then I go select my bullet type, and it saves it in here. So on the DD5, I'm shooting 6.5, 140 grain. The BC is 271. The length is 1303. My velocity when I chronoed last was 2545. I zeroed at 100 meters. My bore height's 2.8 because I actually did zero it. That's a 1 in 10, and that's it. Doing G7 twist or G7. What's it? Then I save this, and if I turn on my Kestrel, I can then send as many of these profiles. I think there's a limit. I think I have 100 on here, 10 or something like that. I can send a bunch of these profiles. There's a connection in progress right now, a handshake. And I can send these profiles to the Kestrel. This can be, so there's this thing called a Kestrel class. I've sat through 2 of them. It's a 2-hour portion in long-range classes where they teach you how to use this because there's a lot going on. And we'll get into some. You want to store your gun profiles on your phone. You send them to your Kestrel when you need them. If you modify details on your Kestrel, make sure you modify them on your phone. Your phone is treated as the master list, and your Kestrel, like right now I only have 1 gun on here because I just send stuff over when I need it. I'm not storing everything on this as the default. That way, if I take a buddy's Kestrel or a different one here in the armory, everything's on my phone, I can send it to the Kestrel. And then it's the Kestrel that interfaces with military like laser rangefinders like the Mars or the Raptor, and I send the gun profile from this into here. But the phone can't Bluetooth to this. This wants to talk to another like military item. It's just how it works. So phone to Kestrel to device, never back up the chain. This is the master, if that makes sense. One of the biggest misconceptions I had getting into all this was thinking that the Kestrel device was just for wind, because it's got the nice little fan that blows and tells you which way the wind's going and by how much. And there are cheaper Kestrel devices that are like $100, $200 that tell you temperature, pressure, compass heading, and then also the little fan for reading the wind. But there's newer devices, and they've been around for a little bit, but they have the Applied Ballistics software inside of the device, so they're paying the licensing to have all of the calculations and everything in there. They've got the accuracy first stuff as well, and then they also can pull all the environmentals that the other Kestrels can and apply that to the ballistic calculation of what the bullet's doing at what distance and what's going on. And the cool thing with this device is you can build entire gun profiles on this device. You don't have to have a cell phone with a bullet library. If you do know like the length and the width and the whatevers for the bullet, you can actually put it into this device. It's just easier to do it all on a phone and send it over. So, got the device right here. The first thing you're going to see is I've got my mill hold here at the top. I've got my wind bracket right below that. And I have two gun profiles that I have put on the device. I have my CSR, so the gun in front of me, and I also have my Daniel 5v4 that I'm shooting for the sniper match coming up. And you'll see as I move between both of these that my data is changing for the target engagement that I have selected. 2.7 versus a 2.5, I think, or it's 2.2 to a 2.7. So you'll see that, you know, this gun is shooting the round much more flat. There's much more muzzle velocity, and there's other stuff going on with the gun that's affecting my hold. So I'm going to go ahead and select the CSR because that's what I want. At any time, I can go into the weapon. I can change the muzzle velocity. I have 2.718 is what I have for this. That's probably the last time I chronoed it. And I can go change whatever I want in here. I can change, you know, the grain weight of the round if I wanted, my zero distance. I can literally change whatever I want. 1 in 8 twist, because this gun's kind of weird. Just a bunch of interesting stuff going on with the rifle. This also has environmentals, so there's a lock and an unlock. Typically, you'll get a live reading. You know, I'll go out to the range, I'll spin it, I'll get a live reading, and then I'll go ahead and lock it so that my stuff isn't changing constantly. And I'm good to go. Another thing you can do on this device is you can also build a range card. So once you have all of your dope put into the device, you can go into here and build one off of whatever increment you want. So in this case, it's giving me 25-meter increments. You could also see your remaining velocity. So in this case, the little dot showing up is showing that once I hit 900 meters of distance, my bullet is starting to go subsonic. It's starting to drop off dramatically. And then once I hit like 1100, I want to say, the round is going to start going transonic, and that's where the wind, yep, 1100, I was right. It's going to just push that bullet, like, I have no control, like, at that point, nothing's going to, you know, it's gone. At 1100, and I have shot this gun out to 1200, and that is absolutely what happens, upwards angle, high angle, 1200 meter target, the bullet's doing all kinds of wacky stuff. So, this device can tell me a lot of things. The other thing you can do with it, there's entire Kestrel classes. If you take a precision shooting course, typically you'll sit through a Kestrel class where they talk about this device for an hour or two. I've sat through 2 of those. It's very insightful. I've learned things every time. But one thing you can do with this device is you could set the distance of your target and the parameters. So I'm just running up the distance to 948 meters to tell me what my hold is. It's 9.98, so 10. I can also set my direction of fire. So it has a compass, so I can see, you know, if I'm shooting into the spin of the earth. And there's also the twist rate. Is the bullet coming out twisting right or left? And then, you know, it makes the flat earthers very upset. So you have all that on the device too, which does affect your hold. You could set all that, but you can also set high angle shooting as well. So if you have a magnifier that allows you to pull an angle, like even cheap ones, you know, 8 degrees, I could go into here, direction of fire 240, and I could say inclination is going to be, say, +8, because that's what my magnifier told me, +8. And it can then affect my hold even more. It actually dropped it in this case a little bit, shooting up at 8 degrees. So there's a lot you could do with this device. You can also create multiple target engagements, and then you can scroll through each of those really fast. You could build gun profiles. You can calibrate the muzzle velocity on this, so the whole truing process. So if I go into here, so I'm in velocity right now, 2718 for this gun. If, say, I'm calibrating at, that's funny, I calibrate at 948. At my range, I can shoot a target at 600. So let's say my furthest target's at 600 meters. And it's telling me, hey, my hold shooting 2718 is going to be 4.37. I dial 4.4, I shoot, ends up being actually 4.6. Let's say, I'm like, actually, to get that hit, it was a 4.6. It'll now tell me my new muzzle velocity, 2663. And so that's how I can true the gun. And I can do that all on the Kestrel, which is really cool. I mean, it's got a full-on ballistic computer on board. Another thing this has is all the accuracy first data and calculations. So for quick wind, what your wind dots will be inside of like a Tremor 3 scope, which I do run, so this is useful. What I use the most is speed drop, which is essentially, I'm not going to try to explain it too deep. So all of you are familiar with a 5200 meter zero or a 36300. So you're not doing a standard 100 meter zero where you always hold high and your bullets fall down. You're actually creating a zero where you could hold under. Speed drop is very similar, where due to the accuracy of this calculator, it can figure out how many mils I need to dial to then turn my scope essentially into a BDC. So in this case, if I dial backwards 1.7, so I'm essentially creating like a 5200 style sort of a thing situation, from 179 meters to 635, if I put the 2 on a target at 200, the second mil in my scope is going to be 200 meters. The 3 is 300, the 4 is 400, the 5 is 500, the 6 is 600. So for rapid target engagement, I could do that. It takes some of the guesswork out of the mils and some of the stuff if I want to do it. There's some other things you can do with speed drop. Not everybody likes it. It is definitely a feature that you can get out of this device in general. And so then I would just write on here 1.7. And then I know, hey, if I dial backwards 1.7, then a 2 is a 2, a 3 is a 3, a 4 is a 4. It's just super simple and it's fun. Really fast on a gas gun. I've used it a lot less on a bolt gun, but on a gas gun, it's amazing. The other cool thing with this device, and this is not for everyone, but when you are ready to connect this to a laser rangefinder of some sort, you can go into Bluetooth. You can Bluetooth this to your phone, obviously, and you could select other devices. So in this case, I have my Mars in here already. You can connect to something like this Kestrel little heads-up display setup, which does a bunch of different things, like a heartbeat sensor for the ACR, or something like the Wilcox Raptor. And you're going to need this device. Like if you're going to go out and buy one of these devices, you definitely should consider one of these to go with it, because it's just much easier at moving the data around from your phone into these. And so I highly recommend that, and that's how I'm using this. But that is just kind of how it works. So range finding is kind of one of the pieces of the puzzle that either shows up earlier or now. It's kind of either or, but a device that tells you how far something is. So in this case, I've used this Vortex rangefinder for the longest time, just lasing a meterage. And then if you have a dope card that you've built using a free app, like the Hornady app, then all you do is laze, and it's like 500, and you look at your card and you go, well, 500, that's, 4 point whatever, or 6.5, and then you dial 6.5, hold 6.5, shoot, and you're good. And it kind of works that way. But there's also some really cool rangefinders out there. They are much more expensive that have ballistic computers built into them. The SIG has the Kilo 10s, which I've played with. They're super cool. I will be getting a set. It's probably the best one out there right now. They are about $2,500. And it's got ABS in it. You can do everything with it. You could get your inclination at the same time. It can tell you exactly what your hold needs to look like, distance. You can move your gun profile over into it. And so you can literally just shoot that and see, I have this gun profile that's loaded. I've got this distance. I've got all this other stuff that's going on. It's going to be 6.8. And you could tell your shooter, who's running the same gun, the same dope inside of your binoculars, you could just tell him 6.8. He goes to 6.8, fires, and you're good. And it's $2,500. For comparison, a weapon-mounted laser rangefinder that does the same thing while I'm on the gun, doing my thing or whatever, these are all about $10,000. At least the military ones that have the computers and stuff in them. So this is the Envision Mars LC or L or whatever it's called. This thing's dope. This thing's very cool. I like it a lot. I'm glad I have one. Most people are not going to be able to buy these. They're going to have to resort to rangefinders and some other things. The main purpose of this device right here is if I don't have a spotter who's telling me stuff, I can do everything myself. I can range it, I can stay on the gun, I can stay on glass, I can make a correction really fast. I don't need someone else to be doing anything, which you don't have to have anyway. But I don't have a spotter buddy. I'm at the range by myself doing all my own stuff. So I really like to have one of these suckers. And I don't use it all the time. I do train without it, but it is a huge value add. This one, in fact, just to get a little nerdy for a second, I don't believe the Raptor can do this. You guys are familiar with when you're taking a carbine and you're shooting at an angle, say a 90-degree angle off of like a car or something like that, and you know that now you're flipping your sight, angle to the barrel's still doing this, but your sight zero is doing something weird. How you have to hold like magazine side of the person at say 200 meters and hold off of the person in order to guarantee a hit. This device does all that calculation itself. So if I angle my bolt gun through a port or through a loophole or something weird, and I laze through that sucker and it knows that I'm holding the gun at like 15 degrees, it'll give me a windage hold off of how much I've tilted the gun and calculate all that for me. Because I could never make that calculation myself at say 420, 430, 440, 500, 600. Like I would never be able to actually know how far to the right I need to hold the person if I'm angling the rifle like this, but this little sucker can do it all for me. It's just so cool. However, these are very expensive and not everybody's going to buy them. Vortex released this last year, and this thing is cool because it's not that expensive. It's sub $2,000. Does not do all the same things that the Raptor does or the Mars does. It's also larger, a little heavier, uglier. It's not necessarily as intuitive. It's using the Vortex program and everything going on with that. But I have shot this out to 800, 900, and it does most of the things that you need it to do. It tells you the distance. If you have the gun built in here, it can tell you like what your hold's going to look like. You can program in some wind stuff, and it will tell you what to do. So there's a lot of folks running around with these. And what I like about this, just from a ideological standpoint, is they are proving that they can make a device that does a lot of the same things that these military devices do, and they can sell it to the commercial market. There is a demand, and they can make it for $2,000. We'll sell it for like around $2,000. So I think that's really dope. This is something that a lot of people can actually go out and buy, or more people, I should say. This is a little Bluetooth pressure switch setup, which I'm actually not sure I like compared to corded like on these. But you could put this near the stock. You could put it out here near the trigger guard, and then you just mount this to the top of your rifle. Or this can also be mounted on the side, and then the screen actually flips because they've got like accelerometers and stuff in here for the software and the compass headings, I'm sure. And you could actually run this on the side of your rifle and literally just look off to the left and see what your stuff is. Just like in, say, Battlefield 4 or some other video game. So that's pretty cool. Nifty device. I need to use it more. It will usher in new devices for the civilian market, which I'm really happy with, because these are all getting made for the military. You can pick these up. You can pick up civilian class Raptors. You can pick up the civilian class Mars. You're just going to pay a lot of money, but they are very similar to the military ones. They just aren't using full power lasers, IR lasers. Because you can buy these with IR lasers and use them to actually engage under night vision. I've done that. It does work. You are shooting a laser from the top of the gun, so you need to know what your hold is. But you can absolutely shoot these, especially on the gas gun, under night vision, just shooting an IR laser out of it. But the rangefighting capabilities of the civilian class of the military ones is pretty much the same, or it's about the same, that I don't feel neutered having this one compared to a full power version. Now, going back to my initial statement that civilians can own the same that the government have in this area, precision shooting versus like bell feds. One thing that we can own much easier now than say 10 years ago even are night vision clip-ons. I've had this white Foss night vision clip-on, the PBS-24LR, or the CNVD, it's got a weird name, which is the same device that gets issued to a lot of people in SOCOM. They may have like a little bit better of a quality tube inside of their system, but you can go out there and buy something that's basically the same. These are around 10 grand, so the ability to shoot at night is very expensive, always has been. The one device that we can't get that they can get, and they don't all have either, like there's not a lot of them out there, is the iNOD, which is a massive thermal device that allows you to engage targets out to like 1,000 meters, and it's incredible. If I could own one of those, I would do it in a heartbeat, although I could probably never take pictures of it. It would be a secret and you guys would never hear about it. The iNOD is a very cool device. There are thermal clip-ons, which I would argue are, if you're gonna spend the money, probably don't do this, probably do thermal instead. I've owned this for years. Pixels on Target has a long-range thermal. I think it's around 16 or 18 grand. There's a few others out there. You can find hisses every once in a while, like the older ones, I think. But you're going to be spending 10 to 20 grand to have some sort of thermal long-range capability. to have something that's not quite what some of the government entities in the military has, but it's getting up there. It's like close-ish. So that is one thing that is limiting to the weapon. That it is a little harder for civilians to have, and not just from a cost perspective, just from an availability perspective of those companies not selling those to the public. So all this was the meat and potatoes of the devices that I've been using for a couple years now and going out and buying: laser rangefinders, scopes, ammo, chrono, all that, Kestrels, all that good stuff. There's also a lot of supplementary devices, such as Bipods, leveling devices, these cool little electronic levels that actually give you a color code if you're not level or not. An anti-cant device is what they're called. There's bubble levels as well you can get. They're not as precise, but they never run out of batteries, and some of you guys are into that. But it's obviously not as precise if the gun's not level. There's little boards you could get to attach to rifles to write down target engagements or various dope that you might need to remember for like shooting a stage. There's stuff you can put onto scopes. One of the most important things though is shooting bags to go off of barriers in some way, shape, or form, or as a stock bag that you're shooting from. Armageddon is the most popular. I've seen these pretty much everywhere I go. They generally have like a heavy bag. This has a much heavier fill. Is much more stable when you're on a position. I prefer shooting with this one, but when it comes to carrying a bag, I prefer this one. This weighs like 1/3 of the weight. And I actually have a clip on this one so that I can clip it directly to my belt if I'm grabbing a rifle and going somewhere. The other mod that I've done that works super well, and you could do this on pretty much any modern plate carrier, is I have fashioned together paracord to the swift clip webbing at the top of my plate carrier because I don't want it to hang off of the cummerbund because that's not very stable. And then I literally just run this, the cummerbund over it. And when I clip my bag into my little paracord loop, it hangs right in front of me at a very acceptable location. And if I happen to take a knee to shoot around a barricade or something, this is actually positioned where I can get my arm into it. And it's super convenient. Or if I'm going to immediately shoot off of a barricade, I can literally just unclip the bag, throw it up on there, and then shoot off of the bag. And this being lighter still works really well. And it's also doesn't weigh a ton when it comes to carrying it. Next is tripods. So I want to go buy more tripods. I kind of got spoiled early on. I was sent this tripod, not by Really Right Stuff, but this is a really nice shooting tripod specifically because of the mechanism to loosen the neck. I got bamboozled early on buying a different tripod where you have to unscrew it to loosen the actual head once you have the rifle. And the Really Right Stuff SOAR division, S-O-A-R, has this really cool latch system that you can very easily detach quickly, manipulate the rifle, and then just close down and then shoot from. And even loosen it just slightly so you could still manipulate the rifle a little bit. Works better when you have a gun in there, without it being completely open or completely shut. The downside to these tripods, they're like $1,000. You're going to spend some money on these suckers. There are some other tripods out there, the $500+ The main feature to this one that I can't seem to find other places is this quick latch feature. This is huge right here when it comes to setting up and getting in and out of position and moving around and stuff. I want to get more tripods, probably from this company. They are just really pricey, and that is just how it is. But the most important thing that I have on this table are these. Now, this is not my idea. I cannot take credit for this. And the guy who told me about this said the exact same thing. He said he got it from Brian at Hat Creek. And then when I went to Hat Creek for the first time, we did this as well. So these are shoot and see targets from Birchwood Casey. You can buy these on Amazon, buy these wherever. These are 3-inch circles with 3/4 size circles inside. So what we do with these suckers is I shoot these 3/4 in the prone at 100 meters. Most of my training's at 100 meters. I'm not actually shooting far. I'm not doing crazy stuff. I don't have wind at the range, so I can't really rep wind drills anyway. I'm at 100 meters working on fundamentals and form. And I'm trying to drill around center of pacer or into the pacer somewhere. This is like a half MOA gun-ish or whatever. And I'm just trying to get every round to touch one of these 3/4 pacers, and I just line them up. And I do one, work bolt, get out of position, get back in, settle into the gun, pull the trigger, and I'm just trying to drill these suckers over and over and over. And this has actually become a benchmark for me on all of my precision guns. Can I consistently and reliably impact one of these 3/4 circles with a gun? I could do it with this gun. I've done like 5, 6 in a row. Other guns, I have a much harder time, even gas guns that are nice. Some of that's fundamentals, some of that's the gun having limitations. The 3-inch circles, I shoot for speed at 100 meters off of barricades. So getting into position, getting on the gun, and then firing a shot. Obviously trying to go for the center, but honestly anywhere inside of the circle is decent. There's also guys that shoot 2-inch circles, but a lot of my training is happening on these at 100. And most of the training people can be doing, and I've talked to Brian at length, is they should be doing this stuff right here. This is how you get good form shooting the rifle, building good positions, controlling recoil, and then once you start shooting at distance, all of that carries over, and you can then start just focusing on wind and other environmental stuff that's happening. So if you're getting into long range, or like precision, I should say, these little suckers right here are great. I can't take credit for this. That's Brian's, and other people probably do this as well. They didn't get it from him, but these little guys are great. And the nice thing is you can see an impact immediately. It is a shoot and see, so you get an impact on it. It's going to show up bright green, so you know when you've hit one of these 3/4 circles, or even just hit the edge, you can just see it immediately. So it's super cool. So I just keep a bunch of these with me at all times. Confirm 0 on these, shoot these for drills. It's awesome. Bipods. So bipods are, it gets wild. Harris bipods are kind of the gold standard. They are around $150. We have a ton of them floating around. They're great on ARs. Just, hey, you need to put something on a rifle. You don't want it to weigh a whole lot. Just throw it on there. Awesome. The downside to some of these smaller bipods when you start putting them on long guns, this is my experience, is they don't weigh a lot, so the gun jumps around a little bit compared to, say, a heavier bipod. And they don't necessarily get real wide for stability. This is as wide as this Harris gets. For contrast, this MDT Skypod can get super wide. So I can be really stable and low to the ground, and I can still articulate the legs, you know, for like a high angle shot or whatever. I can do whatever I want. I can even do some weird stuff if I'm shooting into like a bunch of rocks. And I have used this bipod for all sorts of weird shooting positions. The downside to these MDT bipods that are also ARCA, so I can move it along my rail depending on, you know, what elevation I'm shooting on or what I'm doing, is these bipods cost in the range of $600 to $1,000. Yes, they're very expensive. And I've heard a lot of people complaining about that. I will say I've had 0 issues with the bipod. It's been extremely reliable. I've had this one now for like 2 years, 1.5 years, and I've taken it all over and used it on, you know, larger heavy guns like this, and it's held up great. I've had Harris bipods fall apart. I have not had the Atlas fall apart. This is a nice one as well. This is like the $250 range. Cool thing with this bipod, it is much more stable and rigid than the Harris. You can also articulate the legs backwards if you want to on a rifle for storage, and then throw them out front. But it doesn't deploy as fast as the Harris. The Harris is just like, you know, you just overcome it and then you're good to go. Downside to that is if you start pulling the gun into you for some reason or whatever, you can actually start bending the legs, and you don't necessarily want that. So there's a lot of stuff on bipods out there. There's a lot of different kinds, leg lengths, price points. The MDTs are kind of the gold standard, but they're very expensive, they're very costly, but they do absolutely get the job done. And having the extra weight out front definitely helps with recoil management. I'll be in the prone shooting with one of these bipods, gun will barely move. Shoot the same gun with the Harris and the whole thing just kind of jumps. It's less stable, it doesn't weigh as much, so that definitely helps. But when you're carrying the rifle all day, maybe a different story, maybe you want something lighter. It's just some stuff you have to figure out. So I know this probably sounds like a lot. That's because it is. We've got all kinds of different equipment here and ammunition considerations and, you know, what kind of gun am I going to shoot, and then optics, and then you could debate reticles and mil versus MOA probably all day, and then laser rangefinders, which one to buy, and like all this kit. And there are lots of people out there that do buy, or they're going to buy precision shooting equipment, and then they're not going to train with it, just like they do with ARs. But the main thing that you're going to have to think about and focus on, the main thing that I focus on, is shooting at 100 meters, working on my fundamentals, shooting these little pacers. The thing that I'm unable to work on at my current range is calling and spotting wind.
Give me a right, 4 mils. Impact, give me a right, 3.8 mils. impact center. Good.
Which is the most difficult part of the process when it comes to precision shooting and sending a round past, really it's like 300 meters. Because we've all shot ARs, or most of us have probably shot ARs out to 400 or 500, and we haven't necessarily noticed wind being a huge issue, unless you're like out in the desert or something. Like at my range, I don't have to deal with wind. I really don't. I just aim at the target, I hold appropriately, pull the trigger, and I'm good to go. But depending on where you are, wind is going to be the reason you miss, and basically nothing else. So if you live in a location where you're able to call wind for another shooter, you're able to look through a scope even, you don't have to be on a spotter necessarily right behind them, but even just looking through a scope while they're engaging a target, that can be highly educational. And the thing that I actually need to work on more than the shooting part, you know, fundamentals and being in the right position and stuff, is spotting. Going and spotting for other people, especially in a location that has wind and I can see how the wind is changing consistently, and then walking them back onto the target appropriately and precisely. So that is a huge part of the puzzle that we didn't really talk about. One reason that I didn't talk about it in this video is if you don't know how to set up a gun properly to begin with, the wind call isn't necessarily going to matter. If you don't have a properly zeroed gun, you don't have properly set up dope, you don't have a suppressor that's torqued on right, you didn't torque your scope mount on right, it may not actually matter what your wind call is, you just may be completely missing the target to begin with. Now, once you have a gun that's all set up and doped out and you know what you're doing on the 100-meter line, then yes, the wind calling is something that you're going to need to practice, and the spotting as well. So those are just extra pieces of the puzzle that goes into precision shooting that a lot of people are practicing at matches and at other locations. If you're on the 100-meter line, you're not going to be able to do any wind, and that's okay. Just focus on fundamentals instead. With all that said, you know, in the process of learning all of this, I've had a few sort of oh no moments where I wish I could go back and reshoot content from years before. This is just the double-edged sword of learning a new thing and trying to get better. A video that comes to mind that I wish I could reshoot is the SCAR 17 video, where I ran around with a SCAR 17 trying to evaluate it, shooting it at distance, and not understanding how to properly set it up necessarily. Didn't even own a Kestrel back then, wasn't using ballistic software, didn't really know what I was doing. I can't even remember what ammo I was trying to shoot through that gun. I definitely wasn't testing different ammo, I don't think. There's content like that I wish I could go back and redo just because I know so much more, and I know in 2 or 3 years I'm probably going to say the same about other content that I'm making right now. Maybe not this video, because this stuff's pretty like default kind of knowledge and information, but the application of the equipment is what could change in a few years as I understand things much better. But that's just how it is. We're constantly moving forward, and the older content will not be as good as the new content, and that is just how it works. But all that said, one of our objectives here at T.REX Arms is to curate all of the different products that are available, because just like with AR-15s and pistols, there are hundreds of different kinds of products for precision shooting, and one of the things that we have to do is lean into the expertise of other shooters, myself as well, as I'm learning all of this and investing money in this, and I have invested quite a lot of money into this, and figuring out which products work the best, which products offer the most value to our customers, to people who want to be prepared in this area, and then we're going to be offering those on our site and supporting those with education, which is honestly the most important thing of all. So I hope you guys were able to learn something from this video. If you are an experienced precision shooter and you have some additional knowledge that you would like to share in the comment section, please do. I will be in there reading. I'll probably pin the really good ones, send those to the top so other people can read them and learn as well. But I will want criticism from you guys just as much as I am getting from other long-range shooters that I'm going and training with in person. I love reading through the comments and seeing what I can take, what I can steal, and then apply to my own training and utilize it to get better so I can make better content for you guys. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next time. Next time. I'll start over right there. But until next time, until next time. Yeah. I'm so burned out now. I don't know.